Hi, I'm Emery. I came across 3 videos on TikTok talking about the problem of people being taken off the transplant list because they refuse to take the vaccine. They won't take the shot, they're off the list. And there are 3 people you're going to see in this spliced together story that I've put together. Justin is not a doctor. That is his handle. And then the guy that actually responded to his video of horrifically misinformed illogic he's Dr. Eric B. So it's Dr.Eric.B. You can find him on TikTok as well. And then there's one of my favorites, Crazy Mother Runner. You can find her as well on TikTok. All of them. You're going to see all 3 of these TikTokers talking about this issue. And Dr. Eric actually is taking down Justin is not a doctor. And you're going to be able to see very clearly how bad misinformation, disinformation, and misplaced emotion play a role in spreading the misinformation and disinformation. And you're going to see how easy it is to not fall prey to this stuff. Because all we need do is not listen to Justin is not a doctor and the like, Joe Rogan, for example, and listen to the fucking doctors. So I've spliced these stories together. Enjoy.
But back to the denying people life-saving transplants because they're not willing to take experimental medications or vaccines, whatever you want to call it, is totally unacceptable. It's horrific.
So you're Justin, not a doctor, and I'm Eric, a doctor. So let's have this conversation. So first of all, I want to correct something that you said. The COVID vaccines aren't experimental. They passed their clinical trials. Pfizer's fully FDA approved, so they're not experimental. Glad we got that cleared up.
Hold on, I gotta get it together.
For Tracy Ferguson, these are trying times. Her son's heart is failing.
Right now, he needs a heart.
David Ferguson remains hospitalized at Brigham and Women's Hospital. The family says doctors told them the 31-year-old needs a heart transplant after complications caused by an abnormal heartbeat.
If you look up this recording on Google, you'll find it. Just search University of Virginia, kidney transplant denied.
Now, just for some background for everyone else, he was talking about someone who was either on the liver or kidney transplant list, he said both, who was taken off the list. They were delisted because they refused to get the COVID vaccine. And their reasoning was that they had just gotten over COVID, so why should they be vaccinated? Their doctors tried to explain to them that there's still a risk of them being reinfected, especially with Omicron. They refused. They got delisted. This is also similar to a story in Boston where a young man was taken off the heart transplant list because he refused to get the COVID vaccine.
Brigham told us that he needs to have the vaccine to accept a heart.
Ferguson is not vaccinated. His family says he's not against it, but after doing research, feels like the vaccine could do him more harm than good.
There's some adverse reactions that he read about, given his condition, and he's a man. He made his decision.
The family adds his medical team has assured him that it's medically okay for him to get the vaccine, but he remains steadfast.
He said, I can't. And then he said to the doctor, are you really going to let me die over a shot?
I'm really trying to not sound heartless, but the irony of the question he asked the doctor is astounding. I mean, is he willing to die because he is not going to survive without a new heart over a COVID vaccine?
And it's really terrifying.
A lot of people on the internet are very upset about that. I think it's very, very unfair, this guy being one of them.
There's actually a recording of the guy speaking to the doctor at the University of Virginia that's explaining to him how this is going to play out and that he's at a quote-unquote crossroads. And he says to her, he says, I just had COVID, so why would I get the vaccine?
So if y'all were actually informed on what went into the pre and post-transplant process, this wouldn't come as a surprise to you at all. Like, in order to be listed for an organ, patients need to go through so many steps. They need to be up to date on all their cancer screening, all their age-appropriate cancer screening. They need to be up to date on all of their vaccinations. They need to have tons of tests and different appointments just to be listed for an organ.
Something that nationwide is basically a requirement along with other vaccines, hepatitis, flu, etc.
And why is that? Well, it's because organs don't grow on trees. They are very scarce resources, okay? And we want to make sure that when we transplant this organ, this very scarce resource, into the patient, that this patient is going to have the best chance of keeping this organ and staying alive.
When you're accepting an organ and you have the ability to get one, that is a huge responsibility.
These patients are going to be put on very, very high dose immunosuppressive medications to prevent their bodies from rejecting the new organ that we just put into them. So these medications will completely wipe out their immune system, leaving them particularly vulnerable to any and all infections, especially within the first year post-transplant. And that includes COVID-19. So that means that they are at a very high risk of contracting COVID-19, having one of the deleterious effects of COVID-19, rejecting their organ because of COVID-19, and dying from COVID-19. So we want to make sure that we do everything in our power to prevent that from happening, and that's the vaccine.
And seeing that there are more than 103,000 people awaiting a life-saving organ transplant, and you can't get a simple vaccine to ensure that, you won't get ill and risk dying with said organ that could be helping another person if you're not willing to take care of it.
So if there's someone who is refusing the vaccine, there is someone else on that transplant list ready and willing to get vaccinated to get that organ, and they're going to get the organ over the other person. It's just how it works.
So in making this video, I was looking for the data about COVID deaths and how people who are organ donors that die of COVID, many times their organs are no longer viable. And I came across this story of a wife, woman who was actually a TV writer, producer, who developed COVID back in 2020, pre-vaccine, and for 13 months suffered with long COVID. Her name was Heidi, and she suffered from unexplained neurological tremors and internal chest cavity vibrations so bad that she lost the inability to sleep. Prior to her taking her own life, because it literally wore her down to the point that she didn't want to exist anymore in this world, she had told her husband that she was terrified to still be an organ donor because she never wanted someone to suffer what she suffered from COVID and what might be existing in the organs she possessed.
And I just want to point out how funny it is that you think it's a bridge too far to take a safe and effective vaccine, but you're okay with doctors cutting this person open, taking out their diseased organ, putting in a new organ from another human, and putting them on cytotoxic medications for the rest of their life. But the vaccine is too much. Make it make sense.
This 31-year-old man has 2 children and 1 on the way, and he is on the top of a list where 17 people die a day awaiting to be on.
I don't have anything interesting or entertaining to add to this.
So if you see this segment and think that hospital's horrible, don't. He made his decision.